The sprawling suburban home of the Archer family was shrouded in an oppressive silence, a stark contrast to the usual daytime chaos. Sophie, a woman whose vibrant youth seemed a distant memory, moved like a ghost through the dimly lit hallway. She'd just tucked in the twins, Ethan and Polly, her heart aching with a familiar blend of love and loneliness. The soft glow of the nightlight cast long, dancing shadows in the nursery, painting the room in a deceptively cozy hue. She paused by Ethan's race car bed, gently smoothed his unruly blonde curls back from his forehead. "Good night, my little champion," she whispered, her voice a mere breath, a secret shared with the sleeping child. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Next, she tiptoed to Polly's princess canopy bed, planting a tender kiss on her daughter's rosy cheek, a silent wish for a happiness that seemed to elude Sophie herself. 4 years. 4 whirlwind years since these two tiny miracles had turned her world upside down, filling it with an immeasurable joy that, paradoxically, only amplified her profound sense of isolation. With a sigh that carried the weight of unspoken sorrows, Sophie descended the grand staircase into the cavernous living room. Her husband, Daniel, was a statue hunched over his phone, the screen's sickly blue light illuminating a face lost to the digital ether. News feeds, stock tickers, work emails, anything but her. She poured herself a generous glass of Cabernet, the ruby liquid of fleeting comfort, and sank onto the plush velvet sofa beside him. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "Honey," she began, her voice carefully modulated, a desperate attempt to gauge the minefield of his mood. "How was your day?" His eyes, unblinking, remained glued to the glowing rectangle. "Fine," he grunted, the word a verbal shrug, dismissing her, dismissing them. The single syllable hung in the air, a testament to their fractured connection. A familiar knot of resentment tightened in Sophie's chest. What else could she say? What magic words could penetrate his self-imposed fortress? "Daniel, we really need to talk," she ventured, her tone softer now, almost pleading, terrified of the inevitable explosion. And explode he did. "Talk? For God's sake, Sophie!" he snarled, his eyes finally flicking towards her, glinting with a cold fury in the phone's reflection. "Can't a man get 5 minutes of peace in his own damn house without an interrogation?" The words, sharp and cruel, felt like daggers to her heart. He shot up from the sofa, a coiled spring suddenly released, his face a mask of contempt. "I'm going to bed." With a final, withering glare, he stormed toward the master suite. "Daniel, wait!" she cried, a desperate plea choked by a rising lump in her throat. He didn't even break stride, just a fleeting, dark look over his shoulder before he vanished, leaving her utterly alone in the opulent, echoing silence. The wine suddenly tasted bitter. Abandoned in the sprawling, silent living room, Sophie felt the dam of her composure finally crack. A single tear traced a burning path down her cheek, followed by another, and then a torrent. How had they come to this? This cold war, this chasm of misunderstanding that seemed to widen with each passing day? She clutched the wine glass, her knuckles white, the rich, dark liquid a poor substitute for the warmth she craved. Each sip was a small act of defiance against the hollowness consuming her. With a shuddering breath, she rose, her legs unsteady, and made her way to the ensuite bathroom, a sanctuary of gleaming marble and cold chrome, hoping to wash away the evidence of her despair before it stained her completely. The reflection that stared back was a stranger. Tired eyes, a haunted expression, the ghost of a smile that didn't reach them. "How much longer?" she whispered to the woman in the mirror, her voice raspy with unshed tears. "How many more times can I beg for a scrap of attention, a moment of connection?" 2 stark, glistening tracks remained on her cheeks, mocking her attempt at composure. She tried to force a smile, but it was a grotesque parody, a brittle facade of happiness. The gentle hum of the extractor fan was the only sound, as she leaned over the porcelain sink, the urge to sob, to unleash the torrent of her misery, almost overwhelming. Just as she felt herself teetering on the brink of a complete breakdown, the bathroom door creaked open a sliver. A tiny, tousled head peeked in. Polly. Her little girl, her heart, her anchor in the storm-tossed sea. Curly blonde hair framed a face etched with an adorable frown, her favorite teddy bear clutched tightly. "Mommy?" she whispered, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "I can't sleep." Sophie's heart, already bruised, clenched with a fierce, protective love. She knelt, opening her arms, and Polly rushed into her embrace. "Oh, sweetie, why can't you sleep?" she murmured, stroking her daughter's soft hair, inhaling the comforting scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "I'm scared," Polly confessed, her small voice muffled against Sophie's shoulder. I heard noises, creaky noises." Sophie held her tighter, a wave of tenderness washing over her. "Shh, it's okay, baby girl. It was probably just the wind playing tricks outside, or the house settling." She kissed the top of Polly's head. "Want me to stay with you until you fall asleep?" Polly nodded vigorously, a visible wave of relief washing over her small features. She scrambled onto her mother's lap, snuggling close. Sophie carried her back to the nursery, laying her gently in her princess bed. Lying beside her, Sophie began to weave a fairy tale, her voice a soothing balm, carefully calibrated to sound calm, confident, a world away from the turmoil raging within her. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a little princess who couldn't sleep. As she spun the tale, she marveled at the resilience of the human spirit, her own included, to conjure magic even in the darkest of nights. Polly's breathing soon deepened into the steady rhythm of sleep, her small face peaceful in the dim light. Sophie, her heart a little lighter for having soothed her daughter, gently extricated herself from the bed, planting another soft kiss on Polly's forehead. The temporary reprieve, however, was short-lived. As she retreated to the master bedroom, the earlier ache of loneliness returned, sharper now. The house felt vast, each unlit corner a testament to the emptiness in her marriage. Daniel was already asleep, or pretending to be, his back to her side of the king-sized bed. She slipped under the covers, the vast expanse of cool sheets between them, feeling like a continent. The silence was broken only by the distant hum of the city and Daniel's even breathing, a sound that once brought comfort, now a symbol of his indifference. Just as Sophie was drifting into an uneasy doze, a sharp vibration cut through the stillness. Daniel's phone, lying face up on his nightstand, pulsed with an incoming message. Her eyes snapped open. Work, she thought dismissively. Probably just another late-night email from some overzealous colleague. But then, the screen lit up, and a name flashed briefly before a preview of the message appeared. A name she didn't recognize. A chill snaked down her spine. Daniel often received messages late at night, a fact she'd tried to ignore, to rationalize. But tonight, something was different. A corrosive curiosity, mixed with a dreadful premonition, gnawed at her. Gathering a courage she didn't know she possessed, her hand trembling, Sophie reached across the chasm of their bed. Her fingers fumbled for the phone. Hesitation warred with a desperate need to know. With a deep, shaky breath, she tapped the screen. What greeted her eyes was a gut punch, a visceral shock that stole the air from her lungs. The image was stark, undeniable. A young woman, provocatively posed, her body bare, hair artfully tousled, a predatory smile playing on her lips, and beneath it, a caption that seared itself into Sophie's brain. "Already miss you, lover. Can't wait for next time. XOXO." Sophie's breath hitched. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. No, it can't be," she whispered, the words catching in her throat, disbelief warring with the horrific, irrefutable evidence before her. It was a betrayal so profound, so devastating, it felt as if a jagged shard of ice had been plunged directly into her heart, twisting with every frantic beat. Her world, already teetering, shattered into a million razor-sharp pieces. To keep from screaming, from waking the man who had just casually ripped her life apart, she clamped a hand over her mouth, the taste of salt and despair flooding her senses. She scrambled out of bed, her legs threatening to buckle, and fled to the cold sanctuary of the bathroom. The damning image burned onto her retinas. The bathroom tiles were cold beneath Sophie's bare feet as she collapsed against the door, the phone clutched in her trembling hand. "How could he?" she choked out between gasps, staring wildly at her reflection, a pale, tear-streaked wreck. Why? After everything? Why? The face in the mirror offered no answers, only reflecting her agony, her utter desolation. Each tear that felt like a stone, adding to the crushing weight on her soul. The digital clock on the wall ticked with an unbearable, relentless rhythm, each second an eternity, trapping her in this vortex of pain, anger, and a betrayal so deep it felt bottomless. She was adrift, lost in a hurricane of emotions, fury, grief, the bitter sting of his deceit, and a chilling sense of helplessness. She realized with a sickening lurch, completely dependent on him, financially, emotionally, a bird in a gilded cage he had so carelessly, cruelly, opened to the storm. Hours passed in a blur of tears and tormented thoughts. Eventually, the first gray light of dawn began to seep through the blinds, a grim herald of a new day she had no strength to face. But the children, Ethan and Polly, they were her reason, her only reason, to pull herself together. With a monumental effort, she rose, her body aching as if she'd been physically beaten. She splashed cold water on her swollen face, a futile attempt to erase the night's horrors. Then, robotically, she pulled on a robe and headed to the kitchen. Breakfast. The mundane routine felt like a cruel joke. Each step was a Herculean effort, her limbs heavy with an invisible burden. She was on autopilot, pouring coffee into her favorite World's Best Mom mug, a gift from a happier time. But even the rich aroma couldn't dispel the suffocating gloom that enveloped her. Her hand shook as she reached for the milk carton, spilling a white puddle on the polished granite countertop. Why is this happening? She thought, wiping at the spill with a dish rag, her movements jerky. Why can't we just talk? Just then, footsteps on the stairs. Daniel. He ambled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, yawning, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside her. Or perhaps, she thought with a fresh stab of pain, simply indifferent. Morning, he mumbled, settling at the island with his usual air of entitlement, expecting his coffee to materialize. Sophie didn't respond, didn't even look at him. She continued setting the table, placing plates and cups with a deliberate, almost violent precision. Sophie, what's wrong now? He finally asked, a hint of impatience in his voice, sensing the charged atmosphere. Her eyes, when she finally met his, were like chips of ice. Words failed her, choked by a knot of unspeakable pain. Everything okay? He pressed, raising an eyebrow, a caricature of concern. Everything's just peachy, she bit out, the sarcasm a venomous lash. The aroma of freshly baked croissants, usually a morning delight, now turned her stomach. Daniel looked at her, a flicker of surprise, then annoyance, crossing his face. He recognized the tone, not just fatigue, but something deeper, sharper, anger, resentment. Just as Daniel was about to press further, the patter of small feet announced the arrival of Ethan and Polly, still in their superhero and princess pajamas, their hair adorably sleep-tousled. "Mommy, what's for breakfast?" Polly chirped, already reaching for a croissant. "Croissants and cocoa, sweetie," Sophie replied, her voice an unnerving monotone, a desperate attempt to sound normal for their sake. "I want chocolate sprinkles on mine," Ethan declared, his eyes wide with anticipation. "Of course, honey," she managed, the effort to maintain a semblance of normalcy draining her. The tension at the table was palpable, a thick, cloying fog even the children seemed to sense. They exchanged puzzled glances, their usual morning chatter subdued. "Mom, can you pass the sugar?" Polly asked, her small hand outstretched. Sophie, jolted from her dark reverie, passed the sugar bowl, then retreated back into a stony silence. Breakfast was a strained, uncomfortable affair. As soon as it was over, Daniel, ever eager to escape, quickly gathered his briefcase and headed for the door with a mumbled, "See ya." Sophie watched him go, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. He was a stranger, this man she had once loved, this man who was destroying her. "Mommy, are you mad at Daddy?" Polly asked, her innocent voice cutting through Sophie's bleak thoughts. "No, sweetie, I'm not mad," Sophie lied, forcing a weak smile. "Just a little sad today." "Why?" Ethan piped up, his brow furrowed with concern. Let's talk about something else, okay? Tell me what you want to do today, she said, desperately trying to deflect, to shield them from the ugliness. Once the children were engrossed in their cartoons, Sophie, feeling the walls closing in, grabbed her phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Natalie's number. Natalie, her college roommate, her rock, the one person she could always count on for brutal honesty and unwavering support. "Hey, girl," Natalie's cheerful voice answered on the third ring. It was like a beacon in the darkness. "Nat, oh Nat, I can't take this anymore," Sophie burst out, the carefully constructed dam of her composure finally shattering. The sobs she'd been holding back racked her body, hot, desperate tears streaming down her face. Whoa, slow down, Soph. What happened? Tell me everything," Natalie said, her voice instantly shifting from breezy to concerned, the familiar warmth of her friendship a comforting balm. Through hiccuping sobs, Sophie recounted the previous night's horrors, Daniel's coldness, the argument, and then the devastating discovery on his phone. This girl, Nat, some young thing, sent him pictures, naked pictures, and said she missed him. The words tumbled out, raw and painful. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Oh, Sophie," Natalie finally said, her voice laced with a mixture of sympathy and a grim understanding. "That absolute bastard. But honey, you kind of suspected something was up, didn't you? For a while now?" "Suspicions, yes," Sophie choked out. "But this was proof. Cold, hard, slutty proof. I saw it with my own eyes, Nat. My heart, it feels like it's going to explode." "And what are you going to do, Soph? How long are you going to let him treat you like this?" Natalie's voice was sharp now, but not unkind. It was the voice of a friend who wasn't afraid to deliver tough love. I don't know," Sophie whispered, the fight draining out of her. "I have nowhere to go, Nat. The kids. So you'll just endure it? Let him walk all over you?" "Sophie, that's not a solution," Natalie exclaimed. "And honestly, girlfriend, you've kind of let yourself go too. You need to change things up for you." "Change? Natalie, I barely have time to breathe, let alone change things up. I'm running a household raising 2 kids. When am I supposed to find time for myself?" Sophie retorted, a flash of her old fire returning. Natalie sighed. "So what? You'll wait until he gets bored of this new bimbo and decides to kick you to the curb? That's not an option, Sophie. You deserve so much better than this." Natalie's words, though harsh, resonated with a painful truth. Sophie wanted to argue, to defend her inertia, but a weary resignation settled over her. Her friend was right. She had let herself go. The vibrant, confident woman she once was had slowly eroded, replaced by a tired, frazzled version, lost in the endless cycle of domesticity and Daniel's escalating indifference. "What was I thinking, allowing this to happen?" Natalie pressed, her voice softening slightly but still firm. "You need to take care of yourself, Soph. Seriously, maybe hit the gym, or just start with a walk around the block. Get some fresh air, clear your head. For God's sake, buy a new lipstick." "I can't," Sophie mumbled, feeling trapped, overwhelmed by the sheer effort it would take. "Then sit there and wait for him to discard you like last week's trash," Natalie said, her voice laced with a deliberate goading impatience. "The choice is yours, Sophie." The call ended, leaving Sophie in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. She walked, almost in a trance, to the large ornate mirror in the hallway. For a long moment, she just stared. The woman looking back was a stranger. "Oh my God, Sophie," she whispered, her voice raw with a dawning horror. "You're only 32, you look 50. The evidence was undeniable. Dull hair, dark circles like bruises under her eyes, a few extra pounds clinging stubbornly to her frame, her clothes comfortable but utterly shapeless. Natalie's words echoed in her mind. "You've let yourself go." A fresh wave of despair threatened to pull her under. Just then, a shriek from the playroom shattered the heavy silence. "Ethan, you give that back! Mommy!" It was Polly. "He took my sparkly wand." "I did not. She just dropped it," Ethan yelled back. Sophie's shoulders slumped. Another battle to referee, another demand on her dwindling reserves. "Ethan, are you teasing Polly again?" she called out. Her voice strained, trying to inject a note of authority she didn't feel. She hurried into the playroom to find Polly on the floor, tears streaming down her face while Ethan stood over her, looking defiantly innocent. "Mommy, he's lying! He pushed me!" Polly sobbed. "No, I didn't. She's a crybaby," Ethan retorted, his lower lip trembling. Sophie felt the familiar vice of tension tighten around her chest. Every day was a struggle, a relentless juggling act she felt she was constantly failing. For a fleeting, terrifying moment, she just wanted to run away from the arguments, from the kids, from Daniel, from this suffocating life. "Why did I even get married?" she muttered under her breath, heading back to the kitchen for another coffee she didn't really want. "All I did was create a mountain of problems for myself." She stared out the window at the sun-drenched street, a picture of suburban bliss that felt like a cruel mockery. "I just want things to be simpler," she whispered. And, as if on cue, another wail from the playroom. "Mommy, Ethan won't stay in timeout!" He had indeed escaped his designated corner. The frustration was a physical blow. Sophie sank onto a kitchen chair, head in her hands, fighting back tears of pure exhaustion and despair. When had life become this relentless, joyless grind? She longed for the days she could leisurely sip coffee while reading a book, for the quiet moments of solitude that were now a forgotten luxury. "Why is everything so damn hard?" she choked out. Ethan, sensing her distress, trotted over and wrapped his small arms around her legs. "Mommy, I'm sorry," he mumbled into her robe. "I didn't mean to make you sad." Sophie hugged him fiercely, a tiny spark of warmth igniting in the cold wasteland of her heart. "I know, sweetie, but we have to be kind to each other, okay?" "Okay," he whispered. Later, after the storm of the children's emotions had passed and a fragile peace had settled over the house, Sophie found herself drawn back to the mirror. This time, something was different. A flicker of defiance sparked in her eyes. "All right, Sophie Archer," she said to her reflection, her voice surprisingly firm. "It's time for a change. You deserve to be happy, and if that means making choices that shake things up, then so be it." The week crawled by in a haze of simmering resentment and forced smiles. Daniel remained oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of the seismic shift occurring within Sophie. He continued his routine late nights, phone glued to his hand, monosyllabic responses. But Sophie was no longer just enduring, she was observing, planning, a silent rebellion brewing beneath her placid exterior. Then came the bombshell, dropped with casual cruelty on a Thursday evening. Daniel strolled into the kitchen, loosening his tie, a smirk playing on his lips. "Hey, so, the annual company gala is next Friday," he announced, rummaging in the fridge for a beer. "You're technically invited, of course." He paused, took a long swig. "But honestly, Soph, what's the point? You wouldn't know anyone and you'd just be, well, out of place. Better if you just stay home with the kids, right?" He finished with a dismissive chuckle, as if he'd just made a perfectly reasonable suggestion. The words, meant to be a casual dismissal, landed like a physical blow. Sophie felt a white-hot anger surge through her. Out of place? "Actually, Daniel," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "I think I'd like to go." He stopped mid-swig, beer bottle hovering. He turned, an expression of incredulous amusement spreading across his face. "You? Seriously?" He let out a short, barking laugh. "Sophie, be realistic. What would you even wear? Your yoga pants and that old sweatshirt? Look, no offense, but you're more like the hired help these days. Don't embarrass me, okay?" Each word was a perfectly aimed dart, designed to wound, to diminish. Sophie felt the blood rush to her cheeks, tears of humiliation stinging her eyes. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, fighting to keep her composure. "I am not the hired help, Daniel," she hissed, her voice trembling but resolute. "I am your wife, and I have a right to a life outside this house, a right to feel like a person again." "A right to a life?" He laughed again, a cold, cruel sound that echoed in the sterile kitchen. "Sweetheart, look at yourself. You haven't left this cul-de-sac without a diaper bag in 3 years. What rights are you talking about? You can't even put together a decent outfit anymore." "I will go, Daniel," she declared, her chin jutting out, a spark of defiance igniting in her eyes. "And I will prove you wrong. I want to be part of your life, not just some some shadow lurking in the background. "A shadow is exactly what you are," he retorted, his voice dripping with disdain, turning back to the fridge. "Don't even bother denying it. I see how you look, how you've let yourself go." Tears welled, blurring her vision, but through them she saw not defeat, but a challenge. "And you know what else, Daniel?" she said, her voice gaining strength. "I want to work. I'm going to get a job. I can't just be a housewife anymore. I need more." Daniel snorted derisively. "Work? You? Sophie, you wouldn't last a week. You can barely handle the kids and the groceries. An office? Where you actually have to think? Please." "I can do it," she insisted, meeting his condescending gaze head on. He had to hear her, to see this wasn't just a fleeting whim. "You don't even believe that yourself," he scoffed. "What do you know about a real job? You haven't had a professional conversation in years. Hell, when was the last time you even saw your friends, let alone colleagues?" "That's because I'm always stuck here with the kids and cleaning up your messes, while you're out living your life," she shot back, bitterness lacing her tone. "Oh, for God's sake, Sophie, listen to yourself," he exclaimed, rolling his eyes. "Fine. You want to make a fool of yourself at the gala? Be my guest. It'll be entertaining. I'll even raise a toast to your courage if you manage to look remotely presentable." The sneer in his voice was the final straw. Tears streamed freely now. She wanted to scream, to rage, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she turned on her heel and fled the kitchen. "Yeah, run away," he yelled after her, his voice thick with contempt. "Go on, get out of my sight." Sophie sought refuge in the master bathroom, slamming the door shut with a resounding crack that barely registered over the storm of her emotions. She sank to the cold tile floor, pulling her knees to her chest, the sobs racking her body. Daniel's taunts echoed in her mind. More like the hired help. "Don't embarrass me. A shadow is exactly what you are." Each phrase was a fresh stab to her already bleeding heart. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, to escape the crushing weight of his disdain. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds of Ethan and Polly's playful shouts drifted in from the playroom, a stark reminder of her responsibilities, but also, in a strange way, a lifeline. She couldn't let him break her, not completely. Wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, she took a ragged breath. In the hallway, Ethan greeted her, his favorite toy car clutched in his hand. "Mommy, what's wrong? Why were you crying?" he asked, his small face a mask of concern. She forced a watery smile. "Nothing, sweetie. Mommy's just a little tired. Everything will be okay." He wrapped his arms around her legs in a fierce hug, and that simple, pure gesture was like a soothing balm to her raw wounds. Her children, they were her why. They deserved a mother who fought, not one who crumbled. The next morning dawned with a fragile new resolve. Daniel left for work with barely a grunt, oblivious to the tectonic plates shifting beneath their crumbling marriage. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, Sophie grabbed her phone, her fingers flying across the screen to find Natalie's number. "Nat, it's me," she said, her voice surprisingly steady when her friend answered. "I need your help, your serious, kick-ass makeover miracle help." There was a beat of silence. Then Natalie's voice, alive with sudden excitement. "Sophie Archer? Is this what I think it is? Are you finally ready to rise from the ashes, girlfriend?" "Daniel's company gala is next Friday," Sophie announced, a thrill of nervous energy coursing through her. "And I am going to look so damn good his jaw will hit the floor, and then I'm going to get a job." Natalie let out a whoop of delight. "Yes, this is the Sophie I know and love. Finally, I've been waiting for this moment. That scumbag Daniel won't know what hit him. You just tell me what you need and consider it done." "Thank you, Nat," Sophie said, a genuine smile finally reaching her eyes. "But first, the kids. I can't leave them with just anyone. I need a nanny, a really good one for that night, and maybe more regularly." "Not a problem, honey," Natalie replied breezily. "I know this fantastic agency, Cherished Childcare, top-notch sitters. I'll text you their number right now. You call them, get a superstar nanny lined up, and then, my dear Sophie, I am taking you under my wing. We are going to unleash your inner goddess." "A goddess, huh?" Sophie laughed, a genuine light-hearted sound she hadn't made in what felt like centuries. Okay, I like the sound of that. What kind of nanny are you looking for? Natalie pressed. Someone kind, patient, who genuinely loves kids. Someone Ethan and Polly will adore. Got it. The agency will have someone perfect. They do thorough background checks, the whole 9 yards, so you handle that. And then we strategize Operation Knock His Socks Off. You're a lifesaver, Nat, Sophie said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. The path ahead was daunting, but for the first time in a long, long time, she didn't feel entirely alone. Sophie took a deep breath and dialed the number Natalie had sent. Cherished Childcare, this is Brenda. How can I help you? A warm, professional voice answered. Hi, Brenda. My name is Sophie Archer, she began, a newfound confidence in her tone. My friend Natalie Banks recommended your agency. I need a nanny for my 4-year-old twins, initially for next Friday evening, but potentially on a more regular basis if it works out. Certainly, Miss Archer. We'd be delighted to help. 4-year-old twins, you say? We have several wonderful caregivers with extensive experience with that age group. Could you tell me a bit more about your needs? Sophie outlined her requirements. Someone engaging, responsible, who could handle dinner, playtime, and bedtime. Brenda was efficient and reassuring, promising to email over profiles of suitable candidates by the end of the day. And what are your rates? Sophie asked, a flicker of anxiety about the cost. Brenda explained the various packages, including options for caregivers with specialized skills. For a premium caregiver who can manage the evening routine seamlessly and ensure the children are happy and settled, it would be slightly more, but well worth the peace of mind, Brenda explained. I'll take it, Sophie said decisively. Send me the resumes and I'll choose. Hanging up, a wave of relief washed over her. This was it. The first concrete step towards reclaiming her life. Later that afternoon, after interviewing a promising candidate named Julie over the phone and arranging for her to meet the twins, Sophie's phone buzzed. It was Natalie. Nanny sorted? Yes, Julie sounds wonderful. She's coming over to meet them tomorrow. So Operation Knock His Socks Off is a go? Abso-freaking-lutely. Meet me at the Champagne Bar downtown, 7 p.m. Wear something. Comfortable. We have a lot of ground to cover. And by ground, I mean boutiques. The evening air was crisp as Sophie pulled up to the trendy downtown bar. She felt a flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. Inside, Natalie was already there, a vision in a chic black dress, a flute of champagne sparkling in her hand. There she is, my phoenix, Natalie cried, rushing to embrace her. Darling, we are going to transform you. Daniel will be eating his words with a side of humble pie. I hope so, Nat, Sophie said, a smile playing on her lips as Natalie pressed a glass of bubbly into her hand. To the new Sophie, Natalie toasted. May she be fierce, fabulous, and utterly unforgettable. Sophie clinked her glass against Natalie's. The champagne fizzed on her tongue, a taste of liberation. After a fortifying glass or two, Natalie whisked her off on a whirlwind shopping spree. Store after store, dress after dress. Sophie, initially hesitant and self-conscious, slowly started to enjoy herself, Natalie's infectious enthusiasm proving irresistible. How about this pantsuit? Sophie asked, holding up a sleek, professional-looking outfit. Natalie made a face. Too safe, honey. We're not aiming for competent middle manager. We're aiming for showstopper. She dived into a rack of vibrant silks and shimmering sequins, emerging triumphantly with an armful of dresses. Quick, to the fitting room! The magic awaits! Sophie emerged in a stunning sapphire blue cocktail dress that clung to her curves in all the right places. It had a daring neckline and a hemline that showed off her surprisingly good legs. Her breath caught. She barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Oh, my God, Natalie breathed, her eyes wide. Sophie, that's the one. You look incredible. The store attendant brought over a pair of strappy silver heels. As Sophie slipped them on, she felt a surge of confidence, a forgotten sense of her own allure. Wow, she whispered, turning slowly, admiring her reflection. I actually look good. Good? Honey, you look like a goddess. Daniel is going to have a stroke, Natalie crowed. We need a selfie. This moment must be documented for posterity. They giggled, snapping photos, Sophie feeling lighter and more carefree than she had in years. Accessories were next, sparkling chandelier earrings, A delicate diamond tennis bracelet, Natalie's treat. Every goddess needs her armor. Now for the final touch, Natalie declared as they left the boutique, laden with shopping bags. I've booked you a full pampering session for next Friday. Hair, makeup, the works. You're going to be a masterpiece. Sophie felt a warmth spread through her, a gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Thank you, Nat, for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. Hey, what are friends for? Natalie grinned. This is just the beginning, Soph. The world is your oyster, and you, my dear, are the pearl. The week leading up to the gala was a whirlwind of subtle but significant transformations for Sophie. Armed with her newfound nanny, Julie, who Ethan and Polly instantly adored, Sophie carved out precious slivers of time for herself. On Monday morning, after dropping the twins at preschool, she didn't rush home to tackle chores. Instead, she headed to a serene day spa Natalie had recommended. Good morning, Sophie. Ready for some serious relaxation? Greeted Maria, the massage therapist, her smile warm and inviting. More than ready, Sophie replied, a genuine lightness in her voice. The hour that followed was pure bliss. As Maria's skilled hands worked their magic, kneading away years of accumulated tension, Sophie felt the tight knots in her shoulders and back slowly unravel. The scent of lavender and eucalyptus filled the air, and with each deep breath, she felt herself letting go of the stress, the resentment, the crushing weight of Daniel's indifference. When the session ended, she felt like a new woman, her body supple, her mind clear. You look 10 years younger, Maria commented as Sophie emerged glowing. Her next stop was a yoga studio. She'd dabbled in yoga before the kids, but it had been years. The studio was an oasis of calm, soft light filtering through the windows, the air fragrant with incense. Sophie, so good to see you, called out Yana, a friendly face from a mom's group she'd briefly attended. You too, Yana. Finally found some me time, Sophie replied, unrolling her mat. The class was challenging, but invigorating. As she moved through the poses, feeling her muscles stretch and lengthen, she felt a connection to her body she hadn't experienced in ages. There was a strength there, a resilience she'd forgotten. Wow, I feel amazing, she exclaimed to Natalie later, as they met for a quick coffee. Like I've been reborn. See? Told ya, Natalie winked. You're positively radiant, darling. So, what's next on the agenda for Miss Re-Emerging Phoenix? Sophie, emboldened, decided to book a manicure. Something bright and cheerful, she told the nail technician. She chose a vibrant coral, a color that felt optimistic, defiant. As the technician worked, they chatted about everything and nothing, and Sophie realized how much she'd missed simple, casual human interaction. One afternoon, while Julie was entertaining the twins with an elaborate puppet show, Sophie took a walk in the park. The sun was warm, the autumn leaves a riot of color. She felt a sense of peace, a quiet joy. A group of young mothers were laughing by the playground, and one of them, noticing Sophie's stylish new trench coat, another Natalie-approved purchase, smiled. Hi, I love your coat, she called out. Sophie, surprised but pleased, thanked her. How do you manage to look so put together with kids? Another mom asked, joining them. It's a work in progress, Sophie laughed. But I recently hired a wonderful nanny, and it's making all the difference. I'm trying to reclaim a bit of myself. Oh, tell me about it, the first mom sighed. We have a girls' night out once a month. It's our sanity saver. They chatted for a few more minutes, and Sophie felt a pang of longing for that kind of easy camaraderie. She even started experimenting in the kitchen again, trying out new, healthy recipes. The kids, initially skeptical, were soon devouring her quinoa salads and baked salmon. Each small success was a victory, fueling her growing confidence. One evening, after a particularly satisfying yoga class, she caught her reflection in the hall mirror. The changes were undeniable. Her eyes sparkled, her skin glowed, and there was a new energy about her. You got this, Sophie, she whispered to her reflection. You really, really got this. The fear was still there, a faint tremor beneath the surface, but now it was overshadowed by a burgeoning excitement for what lay ahead. Friday arrived, charged with an electric anticipation. Sophie woke early, a nervous flutter in her stomach. This was it. D-Day, or rather G-Day Gala Day. Julie arrived, all smiles and efficiency, whisking the twins off for a morning of park adventures and craft projects. Sophie, meanwhile, embarked on her pre-gala beautification ritual. Hair first, a chic, layered cut that framed her face beautifully, with subtle honey blonde highlights that made her skin glow. Then makeup, smoky eyes, a hint of blush, and a bold, confident red lip. When she finally slipped into the sapphire blue dress, the transformation was complete. She stared at her reflection, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she truly saw herself. Not just a tired mom or a neglected wife, but a vibrant, attractive woman. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. Daniel, predictably, had already left for some pre-gala schmoozing, muttering something about important networking. He hadn't even asked about her plans, assuming, she supposed, that she'd chickened out. His loss. Sophie arrived at the lavish hotel ballroom fashionably late. The cavernous room buzzed with conversation, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the schmaltzy strains of a live jazz band. She took a deep breath, smoothed down her dress, and stepped into the glittering throng. Heads turned. Whispers followed her. She felt a thrill of empowerment. Daniel was holding court near the bar, pontificating to a group of colleagues, a smug expression on his face. He hadn't seen her yet, but someone else had. A distinguished, silver-haired man detached himself from a nearby group and approached her, a warm, appreciative smile on his face. "Forgive my directness, but you are absolutely stunning," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I don't believe we've met. Roman Harrison, CEO." Sophie, momentarily flustered but recovering quickly, extended her hand. "Sophie Archer. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Harrison." Just then, Daniel, alerted by a colleague's nudging elbow, spotted them. His jaw literally dropped. He stared, dumbfounded, as if seeing a ghost, or rather, an incredibly glamorous version of the wife he'd so carelessly dismissed. "Sophie?" he stammered, approaching them, his face a comical mixture of shock and disbelief. "What? What are you doing here?" "Why, Daniel, darling," Sophie purred, linking her arm through Mr. Harrison's. "I believe I was invited. We were just discussing your company's latest expansion project. Mr. Harrison was kind enough to listen to a few of my observations." "Indeed!" Harrison boomed, beaming at Sophie. "Daniel, you sly dog. Why have you been hiding this brilliant, charming wife of yours all these years? Her insights into market demographics are remarkably astute." Daniel gaped, utterly speechless. His carefully constructed world was tilting on its axis. She's usually busy with the children," he mumbled, looking flustered, and for the first time Sophie could remember, utterly outmaneuvered. "Well, Sophie," Mr. Harrison continued, turning back to her, his eyes twinkling, "if you ever consider re-entering the workforce, my door is always open. In fact, we have a new marketing strategy role that could use someone with your fresh perspective. Think about it. We can discuss details on Monday." "I'd be delighted to, Mr. Harrison," Sophie replied, her smile radiant, her heart soaring. Daniel watched, aghast, as the woman he thought he knew, the woman he'd taken for granted, was not only captivating his boss, but also casually landing a job offer right under his nose. The hired help, indeed. The rest of the gala passed in a blur for Daniel. He watched, stunned as Sophie, his Sophie, effortlessly charmed everyone she met. She was witty, engaging, and radiated a confidence he hadn't seen in years, if ever. He felt a confusing mix of emotions, pride, jealousy, and a dawning, terrifying realization of what he stood to lose, or perhaps what he had already lost. What was all that about?" he managed to hiss at her during a rare moment alone. "The project? Oh, just a few ideas I had," Sophie replied coolly, taking a sip of her champagne. "Mr. Harrison found them compelling." "And the kids? Who's with the kids?" he demanded, grasping at straws, trying to reassert some semblance of control. "Julie, our wonderful nanny, darling," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I've decided I'm done wasting my life on laundry and listening to your complaints. I'm going back to work." The finality in her tone, the cool dismissal in her eyes, hit him harder than any shouted accusation could have. He felt a pang of something akin to envy for her newfound purpose, and a deep, unsettling shame for how blind, how arrogant he had been. "You look Amazing, Sophie, he said, his voice hoarse, a desperate attempt to bridge the widening chasm between them. Thank you, Daniel, she replied, her expression unreadable. But looking amazing doesn't mean much if the person you're with doesn't truly see you or value you. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Sophie threw herself into her new job at Harrison Corp with passion and intelligence. She was a natural, her ideas fresh, her contributions invaluable. Roman Harrison was thrilled. Her colleagues respected and admired her. She was thriving. Daniel, meanwhile, floundered. He tried to win her back flowers, compliments, awkward attempts at date nights, but it was too little, too late. The more he tried, the more Sophie realized how little genuine affection, how little real connection remained between them. She was moving forward, and he was a relic of a past she no longer wanted. One evening, about a month after the gala, Daniel came home to find Sophie calmly packing suitcases in their bedroom. A cold dread seized him. "Sophie, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm leaving, Daniel," she said, her voice even, devoid of anger, just a quiet finality. "I want a divorce." Divorce? But why? He stared at her, uncomprehending, as she folded a silk blouse with meticulous care. Why? She turned, a small, almost pitying smile on her lips. Really, Daniel? Did you think I could just forget? Forget that girl? Forget all the other times I suspected? All the years of being ignored, belittled? Did you think I'd just go back to being your convenient, invisible wife? She laughed, a short, humorless sound. No, I have my own apartment now, Daniel. My own income. I'm not dependent on you anymore. I want to be loved, cherished, respected, not wiped your feet on. Daniel felt his heart constrict. The strong, independent, radiant woman before him was a stranger, yet achingly familiar. This was the Sophie he had somehow lost, or perhaps had driven away. "We can fix this, Sophie," he pleaded, a desperate edge to his voice. "We can go to counseling." "You still don't get it, do you?" she said, her gaze steady, unwavering. "There's nothing left to fix, Daniel. I'm free. And this freedom? It's what I need more than anything in the world." With those words, she closed a suitcase with a decisive click. A profound sense of peace settled over her, a lightness she hadn't felt in years. As Sophie walked out of the house, out of their marriage, and into her new life, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows behind her, Daniel collapsed onto the edge of the bed. His carefully constructed world had crumbled to dust. He had lost her, and in doing so he realized with a sickening clarity he had lost a vital part of himself. Sophie Archer, the phoenix, had taken flight, leaving only ashes behind.